Before we begin, I just want to say a quick thank you to Chef Mario and the crew. If you helped this morning with food prep, if you helped with setup, would you just please stand? Just want to recognize the guys who helped out this morning. Yep. Also want to say a special thank you to Tim Chamberlain, who's videoing for us this morning. Really appreciate the support. Thanks, Tim. And also want to recognize Todd Cromie. Todd, if you would stand. And Todd he manages Dick Maz's General Store in Mallett's Bay. He didn't ask me to do this, but I just want to say thank you. The eggs, the bacon, the English muffins, the orange juice came through Todd. We got it at cost, so just really appreciative. So he didn't ask me to say this, but I'll say if you're in the Mallett's Bay area and you want fresh pie, it's really great. The salads, I think they make fresh daily. The potato salad and all of that kind of stuff. Great deli sandwiches. Check out the Dick Maz's General Store. All right, I just have to say, my heart is warm to see all you guys out here this morning. I've been doing men's ministry now for 7 years, and where's John Rizzo? Is John here? John is here this morning, and John, of course, started men's breakfast through Celebrate Recovery, and I remember when we first started having those men's breakfasts, we had like 15 guys show up, and I really thought when I started that men's breakfast was a relic of the past. I really did. And it just kept continuing to grow and to grow. And we hit a high of 60 guys the Saturday before COVID shut down. And today we have over 70. So we broke a record, and so you guys are part of that. So appreciate it. So honestly, Pastor Scott needs no introduction, but I am going to give a little bit of an introduction because there's much more to Pastor Scott than what you see on Sunday morning, of course. And I'll be as brief as I can, but bear with me for a moment.
Don't be taking my time.
Okay. Pastor Scott, in addition to what he does here, and it's a lot, is the chairman of the Board of Trustees at Alliance University and Alliance Theological Seminary. Even as the operations wind down, he's still very actively involved with operations there. He was awarded an honorary doctorate degree by Nyack College in 2021. He served on the National Board of Trustees for the Christian and Missionary Alliance, the denomination that our church is associated with. And it was on the executive board of that body, that trustee board, for many years. I think of him as a leader of leaders. I truly do, and so we are privileged to have him as pastor. And I say that from the depths of my heart because he could preach anywhere. He's married to his wife Diane. All of you know Diane, and together they have 3 adult children. I think 8 grandchildren now. And he's known to many as Reverend Dr. Slocum, but to us, he is affectionately known as Pastor Scott. Would you please join me in welcoming Pastor Scott?
Well, I won't use a mic unless you can't hear me. But I'd appreciate it if I just appreciate just doctor would be fine. Like I won't. So one, I am always honored to be here. I don't know why I don't get invited more often. But just so you know, whenever I speak someplace that's not, well, even here at the church, I always ask the question, what happens right before me? Because I've just learned through the years, whatever happens right before me, I inherit. Good or bad, I inherit whatever is first. I was at a conference, a camp, not too long ago, about 5 years ago, and I was speaking, and I've learned a lesson. Even I should have practiced that then, thinking what's beforehand. But I was the evening speaker, and I was getting ready for my first night. And just before me, I didn't ask the question, what happens just before me? And the leader got up and said, we have special music tonight before our speaker. And this is just like 5 or 6 years ago. Now, I'm going to date myself a little bit in this, but the the group they had sing was a trio, 2 men and a woman. I'm 65, so I can say this. They were probably 70, 3 of them, which is not typical in your special music. Each of the guys had powder blue 3-piece vested suits on. I just want to tell you right now, powder blue suits you can't buy anywhere that I know of. I think they stopped making those in 1977-ish. And she had a soft yellow full dress with a bouffant hairdo. And they got up, and their special number was a Gaither number called The King is Coming, which again was really big in the early 70s. And they got up and sang, and it was meaningful and good, kind of. But I would also say that just before I'm getting up to speak, the dean of our seminary was there, and he was seated right in front of me. And just before it's time to get up, he leans back and he says, "Well, good luck following that." So I asked ahead of time what's going to happen. They said, "Breakfast. Just so you know," I sent an email to Mario and Dwight and said, "You make sure there's all the bacon they can eat." Because there's nothing worse than speaking to an angry group where they ran out of bacon. So you can thank me for that. I brought some show and tell stuff I'm going to start with real quickly that some of you have seen or haven't seen. The first one is a little plaque over there, if you didn't see it. That's a Lifetime Achievement Award I got for being a soccer official. I do referee soccer. I've shared that many times. I'll share with you a quick story. I'm a minister, and people don't know what to do with that. When you're refereeing soccer out in the world, I was doing a game, and a player in the field screams at one of his own teammates, but he screams out, "Jesus Christ, what are you doing?" So, and there's a rule in soccer about language, profane language or foul language, that's just a yellow card. Yellow card, if you know anything about soccer, you get sent off the field. So I manage a game, so I just run by the kid, and I say, "Hey, buddy, watch your mouth, watch your language." I said, "No one wants to get sent off here, so just watch your language." And he goes, "What? I didn't say anything." I go, "Well, you did, so let's keep going." So about 4 or 5 minutes later, same thing, right in front of the bench. He screams again to another player, "Jesus Christ, what's wrong with you?" So I blow my whistle in dramatic fashion. You blow your whistle, you stop the game. I walk over, I take out my yellow card, I said, "This is for language." He goes, "What language?" I said, "Profanity." I said, foul language. So he's arguing with me as we're walking off the field. I go to his coach, which we're supposed to tell the coaches why, of course, we're doing this. I walk up and I say to the coach, I said, "Coach, I'm sending him off for profanity." And the kid goes, "Coach, I didn't do anything. I didn't say anything. All I said is Jesus Christ. Is that swearing?" And the coach says this. He goes, "Well, son, you were either praying or swearing." And the only expert we have here who would know the difference is him. So if he says you were swearing, so sit down and shut up. So I thank the coach. I thank the coach for that. I laugh at that plaque. It's meaningful to me, but the biggest meaning, if you do look at it, it says Lifetime Achievement Award, and they spelled achievement wrong. So that was nice. The other show and tell thing I have, and you're welcome to grab this later. This is called a Desert Eagle. It's a 44 Magnum caliber handgun that is made into a semi-automatic weapon. I'm a gun guy, so if we shoot targets and all that kind of stuff, I brought it for 2 reasons. One, you can pick it up just to feel the mass weight of it. And it doesn't kick. It doesn't kick because the mass weight of it, so it's incredible. But I brought this for a story. I have 2 of them. My son has a matching one. One Christmas, it's all he wanted for Christmas. And so I had ordered it. And again, we're not talking a kid. He was college age, and we were both we're not collectors as such, but the guns we buy, we shoot and use and that kind of thing. So he wanted one. So I said to my wife, not cheap, but that's all he's asked for. So I ordered a gun and had it ordered, shipping it in, and I did it well in advance. And the Monday before Christmas is on Friday. Monday, I get a call, which I thought was a prank phone call, from a postmaster in Virginia who said, "Is this Mr. Slocum?" Yes. He said, "Well, I'm calling from blah, 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 this major facility in Virginia." He said, "I'm sorry to tell you that the handgun, you ordered a handgun." I said, "Yes." And it was being mailed, but it doesn't get mailed directly to you. It has to go to a licensed firearm dealer, that kind of deal. He said, "Well, I'm sorry to tell you that your handgun entered our facility and is lost. We don't know what happened to it. And he goes, that's a big issue for us for a missing handgun. And he said, so that we have a full investigation going. I said, well, it's a Christmas gift. What do you think? And he goes, oh, we'll have this done probably in a day or two because this is a pretty serious thing. So great, nothing. It's Thursday, Christmas is Friday. I could take a picture, but you're a kid, you don't want a picture. And even adults, you don't want a picture. So I quickly find a place. There was a gun dealer in Georgia, not Georgia, but up by St. Albans, that no longer there. And this old guy, and he goes, I can get you one by tomorrow. That's Christmas Eve. And if you know, I work Christmas Eve. But he said, if you get here by 10 o'clock, I'll get it here for you. And it was this one. It's a little used, but it was made in Israel. Desert Eagle's made in Israel, and kind of a fun thing. So I bought it so he could have it. So I got it wrapped up. I take that back. It wasn't this one. This is the one I was waiting for the mail. So brand new one, wrapped it up, gave it to my son. The son's thrilled. The next day, I get a phone call from Underhill Post Office, who goes, hey, Mr. Slocum, we got this handgun here waiting for you. What are you going to do with it? And I go, what do you mean you have a handgun? She goes, well, your gun's been here. I said, well, how long has it been here? 2 weeks. I said, for 2 weeks you've had it there? Yeah, we just figured somebody would come pick it up. I said, well, I can't pick it up. Oh, that's right. 2 weeks later, the postmaster from Virginia calls to say, we are so sorry that we don't know where that gun is. So the best part of it is it's a heavy-duty gun. And when you shoot it, you got a brace for it, if you will. And so now I have 2 of these, and my son and son-in-law, we're all shooters, so we target shooting. They get the brand new gun, they go out and shoot, and it jams. And it jams over and over again. And that's a brand new thing I just paid. So I sent it back, and they said, yeah, sometimes it happens. We'll tune it. They tune it, send it back again. It's all set, give it to them. I'm actually taking video of them. It jams again. And it's not supposed to do that. And so I sent it back a second time. The guy calls me. He says, we've put like 3 or 4 boxes through it. We've tuned it. It doesn't jam at all. And he said, have you ever heard of a thing called limp wrist? And I kind of smiling. And I said, well, not limp wrist exactly. He said, well, the problem here is they're shooting the gun with limp wrists. So if you're flopping around, it has to have a brace in which to work. And I never shot it, so I don't know. And I'm shooting mine, and mine's fine. And let me get this right. My son-in-law, who's this big weightlifter logger, and my son, the football player, they got limp wrists. And he goes, yes, sir. I go, I can't wait. I can't wait. I can't wait to tell them and to bring the gun back. So I bring that because every time I hold it in my hands, I just think I got to look at my 2 sons and say, you get the old buck to the young buck. You got limp wrists, you little sissies. And so they get bitter about that. My last show and tell is this. That picture on the table is actually me. Some of you think it's my son. It's actually me. And I won't tell you the whole deal about this, but I shot this guy in Alaska in early 1990s. And the picture you had was actually taken at midnight. And I started following a bear with a guide at 7 in the morning. We followed one bear until 5 p.m. So that was an all-day deal. And even as I was younger, I was still in misery by 5 p.m. Couldn't barely walk. At 5 p.m., we got close enough to the bear we were following, but the guide I was with, who, by the way, was like 24 years old, 6'4", 6 feet of that 4 were long legs, and I could barely keep up. And he saw this bear down by the ocean side and said, that's a big bear. And he said, you can shoot the one here that we're now close enough to, or that I've been chasing all day long, or we can go after that bear. And I could tell his leaning was, go for the bigger bear. But he also said, but you got to choose, because if at the end of this hunt, you don't get a bear, you can't blame me. And by the way, I couldn't afford this. A fellow took me on this trip, a very gracious guy. So we switched and chased this bear from 5 p.m. till 10 p.m. and shot this bear at 10 p.m. That picture was taken at midnight. For those who like trivia, I'll just give you a side note. This is an Alaskan brown bear. Just for, if you like trivia, I just like this kind of stuff. There are only 3 bears in North America. Genetically, there's only 3 bears. Brown bears, black bears, polar bears. And you say, well, how about grizzly bears? Grizzly bears and brown bears and Kodiak bears are the exact same bear, same genetics. So there's only three, brown, black, and polar. The brown bears are Alaskan and basically ocean, living on the edges of water and ocean. Grizzly bears are all inland bears, Yellowstone, that kind of deal. And Kodiak bears, Kodiak Island. Kodiak bears are the largest because of their food supply. Brown bears are neck and neck because, again, food supply, which is basically salmon for the most part. And then of course, you got black bears and polar bears. So if you like that kind of stuff, there you go. And feel free to hold the gun if you like, just for the weight, and feel free to look at that. It's been kind of fun, except for it's too big for any of my walls. And so I have him made for a wall hanging, waiting for my son to get a house big enough where he can put it on there. I brought these things kind of for fun, but there's actually a reason for it. Because although I love these things and I love to do these things, I like to surprise people when they see that picture and they go, "That's you." Some of you offended me by saying, "Did you do that?" Kind of like I'm not capable. But you need to know, I like all these things. I like to hunt, and having a bear like this, it's close to a trophy, but that does not define me. I like shooting and stuff. I like this. Someone said, "What's that gun for?" It's only for show and tell because you can't do anything else with it. I put it on my belt one day, just walking in the woods for fun, and my pants kept falling down. So it was worth nothing, except for fun, show and tell. That plaque is something that many of us are driven for in our lives. Recognition. We like, especially men. We like being recognized in the workplace. We like being recognized for what we do, what we've done, and all that kind of things. But the truth of it is, you don't get plaques for being a man. You don't get plaques for being a Christian dad. You don't get plaques for being a Christian man. But we like those things, but they don't define me. And so my thought process is, as I was thinking about this, is what does define me? Scotty Scheffler, he's made the news the past day. Have you watched that at all? So before he got arrested yesterday, and you can hear the whole thing, which it really does sound, even the witnesses said, a misunderstanding of things. But he is the winner of the Masters, and he is the #1 rated golfer right now. In fact, the ratings went down for the Masters. They're blaming him for that because he's such a good golfer that if he's in the lead, people tune out because he's just going to win. And that's what happened at the Masters. He came into the Sunday's round, and he was winning, and so people just said, he's not exciting. Which I appreciate as a golfer, which means he doesn't hit his ball in the water like I do. And so nobody wants to watch him just win purely. We want to watch catastrophe. And so that's him. They interviewed him. I don't know if you saw the interview or not. But they were asking about who he is, and he said this. He said, I don't want my being a good golfer to define me. That's not the definition I want for me. And he went on to say, you see, I believe in God. I believe in a creator. I believe in Jesus Christ. I'm a Christian. And I want that to define me. He said, that's what I want to be known for, not for being the golfer. And I have felt that in my life early on, is that what am I going to be known for? What defines me? And admittedly, I didn't chase after things, but I also admit some of these things are key components as to who we are, because we like stuff. We like nice stuff. We like recognition. We like the plaques and those kind of deals. And it would be too easy for me, quite honestly, to stand up here and say, so here's the deal. I want to be defined. I want to be known. That's a man of God. And you could all say, if you're church guys anyway, you'd say, yeah, I want that too. But I have to be honest with you, that's a little shallow. Now, it's got great depth to it, but, let's be men of God. Okay, let's go. And off we go. And what does that mean? And I ask that question because I'd like to be known for something, but what does that mean for me to be known as a man of God? What would that look like? What would I like to be defined by? And so I want to give you a challenge this morning to some things that I have been in my life been trying to make define me, if you will. Lifestyles I've tried to make, decisions I've tried to make. And I'd like to challenge you down this road. Now, the first thing I would say is this. Some of you might be here as a guest or visitor, and maybe you're not a follower of Jesus yet. That's perfectly fine. Welcome. We're so glad you're here. Come explore with us together. And so the idea of being a man or a person of God doesn't resonate yet because you're just kind of, hey, I came for the bacon. And so, well, you got bacon. I came for Mario's baked beans. Good for you. And thank you for being here, but stick with me in the journey because there's something more to life than just the bacon and stuff. But I want to give you a couple of thoughts that I would like to challenge you in your walk. I have at least one more talk, so I got to come back at least once. I was split here, and I wanted to do a talk about the things I've learned accidentally through the years. And I find a lot of men learn accidentally through trial and error. And so that was one talk I was going to do, and I thought, no, I'm going to go down this road. And I want to tell you a story from Scripture. I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to kind of bounce in and out of the story. Because in this story of Gideon and his mighty warriors, who, by the way, never fought, the fight was done for them. But I want to kind of tie it in because it hits what I like to challenge you to be and do. But I'm going to give you a number of points because, preachers, we do that. And I don't expect you to be taking notes, anything like that. So I'm going to ask you this right from the very beginning. As I walk through these, would you listen for one thing? Would you listen for just one thing where you could walk out of here and say, that's the one I got to work on. That's the one I want to try. And it's a big it's a package, it's a picture, but I'm just looking for one, if you will. So here's the quick background, and I'll walk you through them. So the background of this story, it's from Judges chapter 7, if you want to read it sometime. Gideon has an army, and the background story is that Israel had rejected God left and right, and so they've been under attack. I mean, basically, they've been living outside of God's protective hand, and God makes the decision and says, it's time to bring this to an end, and he's going to deliver them, that they're going to go take on the Midianites, and they're going to win the battle. And so he instructs Gideon, a very reluctant leader. If you know the story, that Gideon was a reluctant leader. I would just say, if you're a reluctant leader, you're a good leader. Bottom line is that the reluctant leaders that typically have inside of them a drive to serve God, that with a great mix of humility. And that's where Gideon's at. He's the reluctant leader. Yeah, I'm choosing you, and Gideon goes, you sure? You sure to me? Isn't there somebody else? And so if you're ever reluctant in your faith, ever reluctant in your next step with God, I would say that's not necessarily a bad thing. Now, if you're putting something off, you got to go get that right. But there's a reluctance that sometimes shows in who we are with a humble side. I want to get it right. I want to be the guy. God comes to Gideon and says, you're the guy. And he goes, well, you sure? And so there's a reluctancy there, but he says, okay. God demonstrates you're the one, so he says, okay. So he says, so get together an army. So he puts together an army. And as he does this, he gets all these people together, and we're looking at an army of significant size, 30-some thousand soldiers in place. And God speaks into the moment and says to Gideon, listen, it's too many. It's too many guys. Now, can you have too much bacon or too many soldiers when you're going to war? And the answer is you can't. There's no such thing as too much of anything like that. But for God, he speaks into the moment and he says, well, there's too many, and I need you to cut it down. And so he says, so assemble the guys and tell them, if you want to go home, you can. So don't forget, when he assembles these would have all been military. I mean, these would have been there not by their choosing. They would be draftees, if you will. So he gets them all together, and he basically says, okay, here's the deal. You can leave. If you want to leave, you can. You can go home, and there's no judgment here in any of this, or we're not going to think badly of you. Just make your decision. If you choose to go home, go home. And so they do. And they do in mass number, like 20,000 go home. That's pretty significant. Now, you're the remaining 12. And as you're standing there, you're watching 20,000 soldiers pack up, and they're going home. I want to be the guy, and so here's my first piece. I want to be the guy who's willing to run in when everyone else is running out. I want to be that guy. Now, I'm not talking about being a law enforcement. I'm not talking about being a fireman. And in my background, just so you know, if I wasn't in ministry, my wife would tell you this, if I didn't go in ministry, I wanted to be either a cop, firefighter, or a mortician. I'll explain the mortician later. I know it's odd. It's odd. But that's what I wanted to do. I'm driven. I am one of these guys that would go into trouble as opposed to out. But I'm not talking about going into battle here. I'm not talking about being a cop and going into a firefight or a firefighter into a building. I'm talking about having a mentality and a thought process that says, while everyone else is bailing out, I want to be a guy that says, I'm in. Don't you love people like that? Don't you love people in whatever you might seek to do, whether it's a huge issue, whether it's a small issue, even in your own home, and you got a project? Don't you like it when either your family, your kids, your wife, whatever, where they go, yeah, we're in, let's do it. I want to be that guy. I don't want to be the volunteer. I want to be the volunteer. I don't want to be the draftee. And so you got 22,000 men, basically 22,000 that left. They had no firm conviction here. Now, I say this lovingly. Gideon would say to them, no judgment here. But I got plenty of judgment here, so I'll carry that day. 22,000, no firm conviction. I mean, they're fighting for their own freedom. But 22,000 would rather go home. So let me tell you an unconfirmed but totally true reality. For most men who volunteer, they volunteer because for most men, they have been volunteered. Now, that's a little different in here because the men who are here serving, you're here by choice. I can't tell you how many times in my life I get home and my wife says, oh, change your clothes because you're going over to such and to do blah, blah, blah. For most guys I know who are volunteering, they've been volunteered. I don't want to be that. There's times where you're going to be, and you're going to step up because someone said they need help. You go do it. But as I said, I want to be the guy where everyone else is going one direction. I want to go and say, I'm all in. I'm all in. Maybe that's not true of you, but it's true of me. I want to be that guy. I want to be the I want to guy, not to the have to guy. If you're here in this room and you volunteer somewhere in the church, or you volunteer to serve people, other people, in or outside of the church, just hear this. I want to be like you. There's a group of guys that put this breakfast on, and we're here at the crack of dawn this morning to do that. I mean this sincerely. I want to be like you. I want my life to be marked by being one of the people who's a go-to person, because you can depend on them. Where everyone else is saying, well, let me check my schedule, let me see, and I get schedules, all of that. I want to be the guy that would just say, I'm in. You need me? I'm in. And that's kind of a critical thing for me, because everyone else tends to go the opposite direction. 22,000 did. I don't want to be a part of that. So back to our story. So 12,000 soldiers leave. God still says to Gideon, still too many. 12,000, roughly we're sitting here at 12,000 left. That doesn't seem like too many. He goes, yeah, too many. You need to narrow it down. So God and Gideon put a plan together. And many of you know the story. They put a plan together. They take the whole army down to the brook to get water. Don't forget, water's critical in the Middle East. So he takes them down to the stream and says, go ahead and get a drink. Now, there's two ways to get a drink. And the one way to get a drink is you get on your hands and knees and put your face down in the water and take a drink. And that would be one method. The other method is you kind of get on one knee and reach down with your cup and cup your hand and drink that way. So he says, so go down and get a drink and watch how they drink, then make your decision. Catch this. 11,700 men all got on their hands and knees, put their face in the water, which means they would have laid down any weapons they had, which means that they're not looking around to see what's coming. They get on their hands and knees and put their face in the water. 300 of them get on a knee, keeping their weapon in hand, cup the water, and take a drink. That's the picture. And so God says, 11,700, send them home. And so Gideon says, okay, you guys, you can go. We don't even know if they know why. We don't have any record that they all fought to stay, but they left. They got 300 left. But 300 of them, and here's the piece, and I've preached on this through the years, 300 of them kept vigilant. 300 of them were still getting their drink, but they were doing so aware of the fact that you need to be ready. And those are the ones that stayed. Here's my second thing for me. I want to be a guy who lives his life aware and alert. I want to be a guy who's vigilant, spiritually vigilant without question, but just in general. I want to be the guy who notices as opposed to the oblivious guy. Let's be honest, we get a rap, and I think it's probably a reasonable rap for being oblivious to things. I don't want to be that guy. I want to be a guy who notices things and sees things. Now, spiritually, I do want to be that guy. Do you know, catch this statistic, 75 to 95% of all men regularly or are addicted to pornography. 75% to 95% of men regularly look at pornography or are addicted to pornography. And they're not. They say, why 95%? Because they're pretty sure that even in the surveys they do, that men are lying about it. And so as they have done get to this, they're saying, we think it's even higher than that. So spiritually vigilant is a key piece. Because let's be honest, I'm old enough to say this. It's not that you couldn't find pornography when I was younger starting in ministry, but you had to go to a store to try to buy it, and you could be seen, so you didn't. And even when videos were coming out, and back in the days where I had to go to the video store to rent the video, there was always a closet with a curtain. And again, you had to go buy the video and be seen. Do you need to do that today? No. It's knocking at your door every single time you pick up your phone or your computer. And so spiritually vigilant, absolutely. But even beyond that, I want to be a guy who's aware. I want to be a guy who sees things. I want to be the man who is aware of other people's pains or hurts. I want to be aware of the situation I'm in. I want to be aware of the environment. I want to be a person who notices people in distress. I don't want to live my life as oblivious and indifferent. We got enough indifference in the world. I don't want to be that. And so 300 are left. And the first surprise to me in the story is that they all stay. I mean, just think about that. There you got 12,000, 12,000, and you go, okay, not great, but okay. And then 11,700 walk away, and there's 300 of you. I got news for you. We could put 300 in here, shoulder to shoulder, standing here. That's the room size. That's not a great army. But my first surprise in the story is they all stay. Now, God has already given Gideon a plan, but from what we tell in the story, he hasn't necessarily told the men the plan yet. And come to find out, Gideon's actually afraid. Gideon actually is thinking, I don't think this is going to work. I don't know how we'd win this battle. So God actually says to Gideon, which is interesting. Don't forget, the plan is, right? So the plan was, and some of you know the story, but I'll say it again because some of you don't. But so the plan was not to arm them with supernatural armor and, some great ammunition. The plan was each guy's given a ram's horn to blow as a horn. They're given a clay pot and a torch. And that's the equipment they're going to take into battle. And the plan is we're going to scare the enemy. Now, at 300, that's probably a good plan. Just to try that first, but that's the plan. Gideon's not even sure it's going to work. So God says to Gideon this, he goes, listen, if you're worried at all about it working, why don't you sneak down to the camp tonight and listen to the conversations that are happening in the enemy camp. Now, just a side note for you, I give Gideon great credit here, because to sneak down to the enemy camp in the middle of the night took bravery and even with fear. So, you've heard that too. You can still be courageous and fearful all at the same time. So he takes another guy, they sneak down, and they get close enough to one of the campsites where they can hear the conversation. Guy number one says this. Here, this is almost a quote from a direct quote. Guy number one they're listening to says this. And don't forget, to get close enough to hear conversation, you're pretty close to the enemy. So the two of them are in the dark, and the guy number one says this. So I had a dream last night that a giant loaf of barley bread came rolling down the hill, rolled through the camp, and hit our tent, knocked it over, and laid it out flat. To which guy number two says, well, that dream can only mean one thing. God has already given Gideon and his army victory over us, and we're all dead. Now, stop for just a moment. Side note, number one, I had a dream that a loaf of barley bread. Are you serious? I mean, I laugh when I kept reading it over and over again. When I first read it, I'm going, seriously? Yeah, I had a dream last night. First of all, if I had that dream, I wouldn't even tell you I had that dream. Or if I did, I would be saying, I was so hungry last night, I'm dreaming about barley bread. But that's the story. I had a dream last night that a loaf of barley bread crushed the tent. On top of that, out of a loaf of barley bread, how do you get the interpretation that says, oh, that can only mean one thing? I mean, that could mean 1,000 things to me. Only mean one thing, we're dead. God has already given them the victory. It's such an oddity to me. And yet, you got Gideon listening, and Gideon goes, got it, good. He goes back, he wakes everybody up and says, let's go, we're going. I have confirmation. What's the confirmation? Well, this guy had a dream about a loaf of barley bread. That's it, let's go. And he goes back and he gets them all fired, he gets them all rounded up. He gives to each one of them the plan. So I'm going to give you a clay pot, I'm going to give you a torch, and I'm going to give you a horn. Goes through all of this. Let me give you a third piece. I want to be a man who lives with confidence and not controlled by fear. I don't care who you are. you're 300 strong and you're listening to your leader said, we heard a dream, these are guys talking about the loaf of barley bread won the day. And based on that, we're going forward. I want to be a guy who my life is marked by having lived it in confidence in God and not walking through life with fear. And let's be honest, there's a lot of stuff in this world to be afraid of, right? And I'm not even talking about the world stuff. I mean, physical stuff, sickness, cancer, the stuff that's out there that we can live ourselves with fear. I know some of you have lost spouses. And when you have gone through the loss of a spouse or a loved one, it's real easy to let fear drive you. I want to be a guy that's marked with confidence. I don't want to be defined by fear. So they get their orders. Gideon says, do everything as I tell you. He says, so here's the pot. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to light the torch ahead of time. You're going to put it in the pot. You're going to carry the pot. I'm going to divide you in three groups of 100. We're going to spread all around. And he said, you're going to do exactly what I tell you. You're going to do it when I tell you. Which means you're going to watch for me because I'll be the first one to break the pot. I mentioned this in a Sunday morning service not too long ago. You know, you got a smoldering torch in a pot. When you break the pot, what happens? Of course, oxygen hits it, lights it up. And just picture, they can't have a lot of armor. They can't have a lot of ammunition because how do you carry a clay pot? Clay pot with a torch in it. It's one of the odd, I mean, it's hard to maneuver. And then you got your horn. The horn you can put a strap on around your neck. But you're not taking a strap with a clay pot and a torch in it. And so they're not well armed, but that's the thing. They all take their position and they wait for him. And he says, so when I start, you start. Break your pot, hold your torch, blow your horn, and between breaths on the horn, start just screaming. That's the plan. And if you know the story, many of you do, the enemy camp, they do that. And the enemy camp, they wake up in the middle of the night. They are so shocked, surprised, scared, and confused and frightened. They start fighting among themselves. They start killing each other. And whoever wasn't killed, they all run away to the point where they hit the river, and then the other armies join in and actually conquer them. 300 soldiers did just what they were told to do. That's that last piece for me. I want to be a man who just gives God my yes, without a debate, without a dialogue. I just want to say yes. What he tells me to do, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to say, okay, I'm in. Let's go. This is the kind of man I want to be. But it's hard because, as I said before, you don't get any awards for being a man of God. In eternity, I can make the argument you do, but on this earth, you can be a man of God, be faithful in every way, shape, or form. And you're not getting awards for that, not getting the recognition. When I do go speak different places, it's always kind of funny to me. I'll go someplace to speak, and I get there, it's like, oh, yay. They usually say Scott. They don't use Reverend Doctor. I wish they'd use that more. But, it's like, oh, Scott, we're glad you're here. What could get you? And we're not talking, I'm not a movie star. I'm not getting a green room full of stuff. But we have water for you. Here's your accommodation. Someone will pick you up, whatever. And when you go and speak, you get treated like you're something. And then I come home. And I walk in the house, and Diane says, did you get to take garbage out? Well, no, I didn't take garbage out because I've been speaking. Well, put your bag down. Don't forget, get the garbage out there. And of course, there's poop in the backyard. You get the dog, you get that too. And all of a sudden you realize we live in a real world, don't we? We don't get to live in the place where it's all about the accolades or those kind of things that get recognized. That's why being the kind of man of God, being the kind of man, period. As I said, even if you don't follow God, the principles I gave you, they're good because God's word's always good. It always works. But being the man of God, just so you know, oftentimes goes unnoticed. But there's something about men, I'll end with this. There's something about a man which I appreciate. And now I'm saying this in a men's group, not in a women's group. I'm not saying this to go home and broadcast this out there. So don't do that to me. If I'm going to get in trouble, let me get in trouble because I say it directly to them, not your interpretation of this. But here's one of the things I love about men, so many men, that I love about them. There's the ability at times to see something and to know either I'm not getting acknowledged like I should, maybe not treated like I should, maybe no one's noticing X, Y, or Z, but there's a deep down piece that goes, but it's right. So I'm just going to do it. I don't care who sees. I want that for you. I want that for me. I want to be the guy that when no one else is looking, I've just said yes to God, period. And no one will ever see, and no one will ever know. And your family may not recognize it, and you may not get the award, you may not have the stuff, but you just go, ha, I did the right thing. And that feels good. I want that for you. I want that for you. I want to be a man in my life who runs in while others are running out. I want to be a man in my life who walks through my life not oblivious, but aware. I want to be a man that would be marked with confidence, not with fear. Side note for that, you can still walk in confidence with fear. So I'm not trying to pretend here that you don't have to be afraid of things, but you can still walk and live with confidence even with that fear. And I want to be a guy who simply says, yes. I want to be God's yes man. I go, yeah. So here's my deal. Now, just so you know, I'm ending early. I still have another 15 minutes, according to what Dwight told me. But I met with the elders last week, and they said, whatever you do, don't go long. So it's like, thank you for that vote of support, elders. Thank you, appreciate that. I feel like my wife is talking to me. You know, said, hey, don't go long. But here's how I'll end. Pick one. If you can remember all four, grab the four, but pick one and go, that's the one I'm going to work on. And very sincerely, make it your drive to live out that one really, really well, all in the context of I want to love God. Again, I don't expect you to walk out for four, but join me with one that simply says, you know what, that's the one I want to be right now. And the other pieces fall together. Read the story of Gideon, if you would. It's a great story. And read it again from that perspective. Everyone going that way, small group going this way. Another big group going that way, and another 300 that say we're still in. And we'll do exactly what you tell us to do. And we're going to go carry out the plan, not based on fear. We're going to do it with confidence. So there's my talk. Dwight, you come up and you can close.
All right. Thanks, Pastor Scott. I just want to say thank you, and here's a small token of our appreciation.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I get to look like those guys. One of the first things I'm going to do is have this logo put on it.
All right, just a couple of things as we close, and then I'll close our time in prayer. You notice there are cups on the tables, green and red cups. If you would, those are for donations to help us offset the cost of the breakfast, so appreciate you participating in that. And then if you could spend a couple of extra minutes as we close to break down the tables and chairs and put those away, that would be greatly appreciated. When in the entrance where you first came in, we have coffee mugs, we have water bottles, and I know many of you have them, but if you don't have one, I'd encourage you to grab them. They're free of charge. We also have a few men's Bibles. If you don't have a Bible, you say, what's a men's Bible? It has references and commentary and devotionals for men. We also have devotionals for men that we gave out last Father's Day, but still have a bunch left over. So if you would like a men's devotional, we have that out at the table for you as well, so please take a look. All right, let me just close our time in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we're just thankful and grateful for the challenge that Pastor Scott brought to us this morning. Lord, we want to be men of God, and it's challenging in this world. Would you help us, Lord? Would you align us with the purpose that you created for us for? And would you give us the courage and the boldness to do that and, to do the right thing when no one's looking, Lord? We need help with this. We pray that you would help us, Lord. I just pray a blessing on each of these men as we go our separate ways and engage with our family and friends this weekend, that you would bless each one until we meet again. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, thank you, guys. God bless you.